Let's go. So on this week of Sisters in Therapy podcast, we're going to be talking about intimacy. I don't know whose favorite topic this is, but it's a topic that we all should be talking about.
Yeah.
So intimacy refers to a close personal connection characterized by emotional openness, trust, and mutual understanding. And this is not just for romantic relationships at all. Where are we going with intimacy this session? Are we talking about intimacy in the context of romance? Or are we just talking about it in general relationships?
Talk to us, Dr. TK.
I think in general,
Okay.
with all relationships, just intimacy. What does it even mean for you? This is a good place to start, actually. This is perfect.
What does it mean?
No, what is it for you, for both of you? What would you say intimacy looks like right now for you in your life? How have you defined intimacy personally?
I would say as a single person, what has my way of defining intimacy at this point, because we're not just talking about romantic intimacy, is the closeness that I have with the people in my life, right?
Okay.
That is what feels intimate, having those safe spaces, being able to be my freest self feels close and intimate for me. So that's how I would describe my intimate relationships at this point in my life. Yes.
What was the question? What does intimacy mean to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's my definition.
And what it looks like. Yeah.
What it looks like for me. So I would say on the basis of a Black woman, what intimacy for me is just being seen and somebody respecting my intellectual kind of thought processes. So I think intellectual intimacy is probably my favorite type of intimacy because once you get into that intellectual type of talk, when you're talking about your beliefs, your ideas, and your values, it's not always embraced by everybody, but the people who do embrace it, like I always feel seen for the most part till they get the... But for the most part, I always
She got beef offline.
But intellectual intimacy is definitely one of my favorite types of intimacy. And I think that the people in my life do a great job of just kind of embracing who I am in that aspect.
I think it's beautiful that you just hit on like being seen, because I say stuff is beautiful all the time because I genuinely feel like it's beautiful. Okay. So you said, Brittany, I know you had a point too, but you hit on feeling seen. I think that's a big piece of like a love language that we don't talk about enough for people. So tell me, because somebody's asked me this before and I was like, wait, shit, let me think about this.
Okay.
How can people help you be seen? How do you know that they are seeing you?
I mean, it depends on who I am trying to be seen by. You know, that's a really loaded question. I have a big answer. It depends. So romantically, how I like to be seen is for somebody to acknowledge the historical plight of Black womanhood. That's what being seen to me looks like. So in order for you to understand me and understand my ideology as this type of Black woman, because I would say that I'm conscious as a Black woman, and then most people probably say I'm angry. Because I am very, I get upset about things such as racism, sexism, patriarchy, misogyny, and all those things. Those things kind of make me upset. But I'm learning when to bring that stuff up and when not to bring that up. But when I do bring it up and it's embraced and people are genuinely interested in listening to what I have to say so they can understand me, that helps me feel seen.
So when people seek understanding,
but not to dismiss and tell me I'm tripping. So seeking understanding, becoming curious. But even with my couples that I work with, I'm always encouraging and trying to teach them to become curious.
Yeah.
Please stop dismissing what somebody is saying and just become curious as to why they're saying what they're saying.
What do you think is a limitation or barrier to that?
Holding space. We don't know how to hold space.
Okay. That's a good point.
And we're gonna have to talk about that as well.
Yeah.
Holding space.
And that kind of is a branch off from what we talked about in the previous session about how community is about holding space.
Right.
And being responsible with the space that you're holding and being responsible with people in your life.
And that's the difference of holding space out of love. Like you said, that's a key point. Don't listen to understand so that you can respond or tear down or dismiss what I have to say. Listen because you care to understand me, and that's it. You ain't got to do shit with it.
Yeah, and I'm not telling you to
it
solve
helps you.
the problem.
It helps you love people better.
Yes,
but if you think about, so we're talking about intimacy, and really, so I guess we can't talk about space holding. But when I think about intimacy for Black people, I think that something that we do well is not talking about things. We do. Not all of us, but historically we don't talk about nothing. We just sweep it under the rug and we just tell people to push through and keep going. So for us as Black people to be more intimate, we have to get in the habit of holding space. And that's one of the things that generational well-being, I keep talking about that, because we have to be the generation that learn how to hold space.
For sure.
I think that definitely
We have
goes
to hold
into our
space.
vulnerability episode that
For
we'll
sure.
be talking about next. But I think that's a really important key component to our barriers for being able to hold space.
Mm-hmm.
And then that makes us a little bit of, I would say, emotionally intimate deficient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to hold that space.
Yeah.
That's a good segue into what are some other things that we think stop us from being able to be intimate with one another or in different spaces, in different relationships.
I think it goes back to what Sadie was saying earlier. It's people don't know how to hold the space. And then another layer to that is, how intimate are you with yourself? I
Facts.
truly don't believe that you can practice these things externally if you've not done it internally.
That's true. Self-intimacy is a thing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so even your point about being curious
Mm-hmm.
and seeking understanding, you also have to do that with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
Almost
what
first.
Almost absolutely first. It's
Mhm.
it's how do you begin to cultivate what you want to receive, right?
Mhm.
And
I
in
love
order
that.
to do that, you have to begin being active with it with yourself
Mhm.
first.
It's
That
like,
way you know what spaces to go into.
but that's also like some of what Bell Hooks was saying all about love, about community. It should not be out of desperation or because you're scared to be alone. You should be able to sit with yourself, enjoy your own company before you go be in the company of others.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with intimacy. Like, we go into different spaces because we want to be filled, but sometimes we need to go into those spaces already filled so we can not just pour into people, but not just take so much from other people so that we can fill ourselves up.
For sure.
I think that's a big piece of intimacy as well.
Because then I feel like people who do that, you're still going to feel deficient because they're
Yeah.
filling you with things that you don't even know if they're doing anything for you. Because they're just throwing anything at you. They don't even know how to fill you up in a way
Mm-hmm.
that feels
Yeah.
like love and care.
And they don't even
Okay.
know that's their responsibility. They're just there. You
Okay.
know? So yeah. What was the question you had asked? Or were we answering that? Because there was another one that you had asked before that.
Girl.
How do we what does intimacy mean to us?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what does
Yeah.
it mean
What
to
does
you,
it look
T?
like?
Yeah.
What does it look like for you?
To me, intimacy looks like vulnerability. It looks like being present
Okay.
and mindful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a part of intimacy that we don't always talk about.
Being mindful.
Yeah, mindful and present.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, for any type of intimate relationship it's kind of, I guess, what Brittany was saying too, just kind of knowing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really taking the time to, whether it's in a friendship, whether it's with my family, whether it's with a partner, whether it's with myself, I really do need to unplug and tune in to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Also, kind of what you were saying, Mercedes, a whole space for myself
Mm-hmm.
to fully exist. That's a lot. I'm very introspective.
You are.
And so for me, intimacy really means that. How do I just be here and be present
Mm-hmm.
with whoever is around me?
Mm-hmm.
Because at this moment, this is the only space and time that exists. This is the only one that's promised. How do I be all in?
Yeah. I love that.
That feels intimate as fuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for you, intimacy looks like vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Because you cannot have intimacy without vulnerability. You can have vulnerability without intimacy. And that's one of my
Right.
favorite things to say. And you can't have any of those things without safe spaces.
Mhm.
Hello.
Yeah.
And safe spaces are not found, but created. You have to
Yes.
create them. People
Yeah.
think that they can just go and be with somebody and the space will be safe. Not that people are just horrible to each other, but if we don't actually take action and be intentional with creating a safe space, it will not exist. It just
Yeah.
doesn't fall out of thin air.
Yeah.
So that's the work. It takes work to be intimate. It
Oh,
takes
yeah.
work to be vulnerable, and it takes work to create safe spaces.
Absolutely.
And I hate that everything takes work, guys.
Everything does.
I mean, I mean, yes, but then then you learn nothing if you think it's complete, right? So
Okay.
you have to be active in it, because then you learn what to adjust as people change, as times change, as the relationships change.
As you
really.
change.
As you change.
It's really with respect to you.
Correct.
That's a big thing too. Is really, it's respect to you and your
Okay.
humanity and the people around you.
Mhm.
When you allow for this constant learning and evolving
Mhm.
into who you are and into your relationships.
Mhm.
Mm.
I like the Mercedes, you said cultivating. I think you said cultivating or building these safe spaces. So
creating. I said creating.
Oh.
Brittany would have said cultivating.
There's nothing wrong with cultivating
at all.
So how would y'all say, because you now have these intimate spaces, what has your, I guess, story been like, or what has your path been like to discover what intimacy means to you, and how have you gone about creating this intimacy with yourself or even in your relationships?
I don't think it was the easiest at first, because if I'm always going to go back to the root of how we get to be how we are.
Perfect.
And so what I'll say is kind of, we talked about this on one of the sessions, I think, just how sometimes as a child growing up, you're told to stay in a child's place or just stop crying or things like that. I think that kind of makes the vulnerability hide. So you don't know how to be vulnerable. And so then you don't know how to really tap into intimacy. So it's really something you have to learn how to do, because we're coming up and we don't really know how to be vulnerable because we haven't really been given the space to be vulnerable.
Did you get any lessons on intimacy growing up?
No, but everybody's in survival mode. So how could we even know to stop and that? But that also goes into like holding space. We don't got time. You got to get over it. Yeah. So I think I had to learn how to be vulnerable and to be intimate in certain spaces. But also I was always the person that was kind of told to stop crying, or you wear your feelings on your sleeve. So for a long time, I guess I would say that I thought it was a bad thing, or because I was a Pisces. That's what I hear. I don't know, but the zodiac signs, but that's what I hear a lot. But I can't say I am a probably sensitive person.
Why you laughing?
So am I. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with being a little sensitive.
I laugh because he started making a face. But I'm a highly sensitive person, guys. But it's okay. It's who I am.
It's okay.
I forgot the question.
How do you...
Yeah, like what's been like your story or your influences to how you come to understand intimacy or grow your intimacy?
I think I answered it. That's
you did, because you also talked about barriers.
Yeah, those were my barriers. But I think friendships taught me that. For example, me and your friendship started off when we were like 19, and so I've grown in that friendship, and just very grateful for the grace from you, just because I was able to become more emotionally mature, and to be able to say what I need to say or express what I need to express, and without coming off as abrasive or passive aggressive. I'm still a little passive aggressive, but I'm working on it.
No.
I'm working on it.
As long as you're working on it, that's fine. We all have work to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Really. Intimacy. Let me see. I think I have told y'all I've grown up with community my entire life, and I'm really close to my family. And so I never would say I would categorize it or label it as intimacy. But now that we're talking about it, it is a form of intimacy. I've learned my own connection with intimacy through discernment.
Yes.
Because through discernment, I know the spaces that I want to be in and the spaces that I don't.
Yes.
And the spaces that I don't want to be in don't reflect the intimacy that I feel connected to, right? So I know how to remove myself.
That is a skill.
It is a skill. But I had to, you know how they've said, like, does he relax your nervous system? Does this space relax my nervous system? If it does not, now first, a part of that is, okay, why are you uncomfortable, right? Is there something about this uncomfortable? Are you making it uncomfortable? Are you trying to be somebody that you're not? Like, let's reevaluate. How are these people actually experiencing you? I try to pay attention to how people experience me. Not that I would know fully, but I try to think about that because I want to show up as my most soft, authentic self. Really. Vulnerability was something I certainly had to learn because I always have things here. And a part of that was self-judgment, right? Like, well, why don't you really know? Like, figure it out. And maybe some of it is being proficient in some regard. But when I knew the spaces that were safe, vulnerability became much easier.
Facts. When you know who your people are, it's easier to navigate the world and spaces. But it's very possible for you to know who you are and still show up to spaces where you kind of feel out of place, or you feel like you can't be your authentic self, but maybe you're there and you don't have the means to leave that space just yet. That's when you may not be able to be your most authentic self. You may have to keep things short or just short and sweet to the point, because sometimes sometimes I have found myself in those type of spaces. Like, I'm not trying to be problematic. I don't even want to hold nobody accountable, but I'm in this space right now. But I know the next time, this is not a space I'll be in, because this is not my vibe.
Yeah.
So sometimes that does happen.
And that's where discernment comes in,
Facts.
right? You pay attention to the evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you answer yours? Yeah, I think you did.
No, so for me, intimacy, I did. I didn't, like, historically,
Okay.
I guess how I grew up, I'm trying to recall how I came to understand intimacy. The earliest stages that I can think about is really just sharing a room with all of my siblings.
Okay.
So there's 4 of us. And so that felt very intimate.
It is.
Well, now that I'm reflecting back on it, it feels intimate, and it feels like something that it was a good thing. Like, people could easily look back and say, that doesn't sound pleasant, or that doesn't sound ideal. But no, it was actually a really good, it was a really good time. It was a really intimate experience that we all shared growing up. I don't think I ever really seen intimacy romantically growing up. I did see intimacy in community. There was this hallway or something that we all stayed on, and there was a lot of other single parent families kind of who lived right by us, and everybody was like in community together, and it felt very intimate. Like, I would go over and lay with somebody, like with this other mom who was super great and sweet, and they would just really take turns watching each other's kids, or if somebody had a game, they would go over there, or if somebody was taking like a late night nursing class, the kids would come over to our place. And so all of that felt very intimate.
And sound like it was a village and a community, and it was safe.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was really trying to find other ways to describe, now that I know that it is intimacy, it's through gathering, right? So like food is always a part of gathering. And so I learned intimacy through my love for cooking, and so therefore sharing that with other people.
That brings me into kind of naming some of the types of intimacies, because we had an episode on intimacy before, but it was mostly about romantic relationships. But those same types of intimacies apply to everything you guys just talked about. So the emotional intimacy is being able to openly and safely express your emotions with the people in your life, the people you love. Experiential intimacy would be doing things such as you just said, cooking together. You and your mom, you cook for the holidays now. That's experiential intimacy. Going to work out together, signing up to do a race, all those things. That's a form of experiential intimacy.
Let's talk about it. I want to know more about, like, how are some ways that y'all practice intimacy actively now in your life? Because you said cooking.
Okay. Are we wanting to name the types of intimacy, or just talk about intimacy in general? Do you want to know what category it falls under? I'm just wondering.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay. The cooking for you?
Okay. Cooking, reaching out to people, hanging out, hosting. I've fallen off of that a little bit.
Hosting?
Hosting.
Yes, you have.
I love hosting. I've fallen off. I know.
She's falling off,
I've fallen off.
I'm Mercedes saying, I need you to host something.
I need her to cook.
It's been a minute. I mean, I wouldn't turn down some mac and cheese. I'm just saying.
I just gave her some cookies, okay?
They was good too.
But yes, I've fallen off quite a bit, because kind of similar to what it comes up all the time. You know how you get into survival mode, so you lose things, that they don't become as much of a priority. And a big part of that is I've seen more of my friends in other settings, right? So it didn't feel as much of a need. But I do want to get back to that, because that is my form of creating a safe space.
Okay.
And for us to just be. I love that.
I love that. This is also a form of intimacy.
Yes.
Sharing this space with these two, and then just inviting y'all to be a part of this space. This would be, for me, I think, maybe intellectual intimacy, because we get to share our perspectives, our values, and our beliefs, but also our personal and professional opinions about all these things that we're talking about. So this is one of the ways in which I think I kind of cultivate intimacy.
Yeah.
For me, I would definitely say like a new piece of intimacy for me that I'm finding as intimate would be, this might sound weird, but it really is like spending time with my plants, like taking care of and tending to my plants, having my hands in the soil, like repotting, or like trimming, or checking for things, or propagate. Like, I feel
that's a spiritual type of intimacy.
It's so that's spiritual
intimacy.
It's so spiritual, because I feel so grounded, especially being in Houston, being in the city, being away from like Arkansas and nature and things like that. I find myself really not feeling as grounded sometimes. And tending to my plants makes me feel connected to something so much bigger than me. It feels super intimate.
I love that for you.
Thank you.
She's a plant connoisseur.
I am.
She's propagating plants.
She's exceeded us, and we started this plant stuff.
We really did. I done fell off bad.
We started this.
Damn.
But no, that's a type of spiritual intimacy.
I love that.
That's a very important one, and people get confused on it because they try to tie spiritual intimacy to religion, and they have commonalities, but they're different. Spiritual intimacy is more so grounding yourself in nature, meditating, and going to parks, going on walks, and things like that. People are probably engaging in these type of activities, but don't realize that this is intimacy, especially when you're doing it with people who are not your romantic partners.
Yeah.
Physical intimacy is something that I was reading about, and it was just talking about how getting rubbing your hands through like your grandmother's hair, or for us as Black people, it could be getting our hair braided or somebody greasing our scalp. That is also physical intimacy. Those are connections.
There ain't nothing like a good hair wash.
Or a good hair wash or something like that. Or just a father throwing his child in the air, things like that. Those are things that kind of deepens our connections in our relationships.
I had an experience like that with my niece. We were getting ready to go to our graduation in Dallas. And
Z?
Yeah.
Okay.
My first niece, she's not a little girl anymore. She's definitely taller than me. But there was a moment in the car, I think that she could tell that I was nervous just because this is the last graduation. This is the biggest graduation. This is a PhD graduation. And she never came to any of my other graduations. And so I had promised her this probably before I even enrolled in the program. And so on the way to graduation, I was just like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I was just nervous, and I don't even know why. But
it was chaotic.
It was very chaotic. And, family there, and so you're trying to like tend to yourself and prepare for the graduation, but you're also like trying to tend to like your people and make sure everybody else is good and straight. But on the way to graduation, she said something to me, and I think I just reached out my hand, and she just held my hand. And I want to tell you, that's a moment that will never
that's beautiful
leave my mind. And that was some of the most precious physical intimacy that I've had.
Yeah, I love that.
So what do y'all think is the importance of go ahead.
No, go finish your question because I think I'm going to answer it.
I was going to say, what do y'all think is the importance of recognizing some of these things as intimacy and intentionally like calling it that?
Yeah, I think intuition plays a big part of it. I think like paying attention to the people around you, right? Like she might not have called it that, but just touching your hand was the gesture that spoke volumes for you, right? And I think a big part of it is knowing the people around you. Like sometimes I'll touch my mom's shoulder. Like if she's sitting in front of me in the car, I'll touch her shoulder. She'll touch mine back, and we're not saying anything. It's just, hey, girl. And I'm not saying nothing. She'll touch it and she'll tap my hand, and then she'll pinch me because she's annoying.
Your mom?
Yes, she's always tickling or pinching. She's so annoying. Love you, Ma.
How do you think that, like, recognizing that and calling it intimacy, what does that shift for you mentally or emotionally to identify it and to call it what it is versus not being mindful about it or not calling it out, just kind of saying, oh, okay. Like, what's the difference? What does it do for you mentally, emotionally?
I think with you asking me in it that way makes it more powerful for me because when I touch somebody I care about, especially when it's my mom, I'm about to cry. It reminds me that it reminds
We don't have any Kleenex, guys. It's okay. I didn't think that anybody would cry today, but it's okay. You can cry, Bree.
It reminds me that she's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it did for me too. And I almost cried too.
Yeah.
Thinking about Z?
Thinking about Z and then thinking about my sister.
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost like it was a representation of Keita somehow being there.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think that deepens connections.
Yeah.
Between you and said persons. Call it intimacy.
Like that, like we say with any other thing, it's like speaking truth to power. It's like the labeling of things or the intentionality.
Speaking truth to power.
What they are.
But that's a barrier for us because we don't like to call things what they are. But speaking truth to power, I like that you said that. That's my language.
I know.
Speaking truth to power and calling things intimacy. And it's important. This conversation is important for a lot of reasons. One, because when we think of intimacy, we think about sex, and that's not what we're talking about here. But also it's important that everybody know that you can have intimacy in your friendships. That means men can have intimacy with each other without it being sexual. I think it's important to talk about that, because when men are seen kind of displaying intimacy with their brothers or their homeboys, there are a lot of people sexualizing it, and it is 100% incorrect.
Right.
And I think I saw this recently. I don't know who it was, but it really worked my nerves because people were so incorrect.
Yeah. I mean, people also don't.
Wiz Khalifa. It was Wiz Khalifa.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, bro, stop. Like, this is like, they sexualize everything he does.
He be minding his business, though.
But him getting, so culturally, when people smoke, they do what he did. Like, that's not uncommon. I don't know if y'all
Wait, what he do?
He took some smoke from somebody, but it was a guy. But I've seen men do that.
Oh, what's they called?
Hotboxing or something.
Yeah.
It was something similar to that. And people were having all of these negative comments. I'm like, bro, that is not, you're sexualizing this for no reason. It's important to know that people can have these type of intimate connections without it being sexual. It is very important to know that.
Yes, and I love the fact that you brought that up, because that kind of touches on what we had talked about. I think it was the last session about creating a safe space.
Yes.
And men asking, where is our safe space? It starts with giving people room to be exactly who they are.
Facts.
Without trying to tie whatever stereotype or whatever way you think a man should be.
It's the gender role that you're prescribing them to.
Yes, let's talk about that, because that sounds like cultural expectation or societal pressures.
Yes, that is exactly what that is.
Of intimacy.
Yes, because we sexualize everything.
Yeah.
Is that not more of us regurgitating and perpetuating
the oppressor's language?
Yeah.
And the oppressor's behavior?
White supremacy does its job very well.
That's exactly what that is.
They don't even have to do it anymore because it's so deeply ingrained.
I think they went over a lot of people's head because it came in too fast. But that's what you just said is very important. When we sexualize everything, especially our connections with each other, especially when we see two black men being loving towards each other and we sexualize it, we are in fact using our oppressive, we're in fact using the oppressor's language and behavior to kind of criticize each other.
Yeah. Yeah, white supremacy does its job very well.
So essentially we are upholding it.
I didn't think that would come up today, but yes, we are complicit in upholding that most times. Yeah. That's something I challenge us to think about and to do differently.
I wonder how does it become obsolete? Because it is so active at this point. It almost seems ingrained in people's behavior.
It is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, not almost. It definitely is.
So that's a barrier to intimacy because that's one of your questions about the cultural expectations. That's a barrier to us having these type of intimate relationships. That is one.
I was about to say, so what are we saying? What are the things that we are regurgitating? What, that men can't hug, that masculinity looks a certain way? Like, what are some other things that we were taught about intimate relationships? I was going to say, I've seen somewhere where they talked about how even back in the day on plantations or even outside of plantations, Black people were not allowed to show affection, physical affection.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Is this a part?
Yes.
Of playing into how
it really does go back to slavery.
It 100% that's a part, because when you are punishing people for being affectionate, I think I was just reading a research article that said that type of distress plays a role. It just trickles down to now the slave's husband and wife, to the slave's children, and it just keeps repeating itself generation after generation. That is exactly how we got here. But we know that. So now it's time for us to do something different. What Brittany said sessions ago, we have to acknowledge the fact that it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't fit.
We've adapted it to our own terminology now, though. Yeah. And almost embodied it to make it our own. Because now we don't say the oppressor is saying this, the oppressor is saying that. We're saying, oh, man, that's weak. You weak for that.
We do.
What do they say?
Simp.
You simp. Like we've made it
Sassy.
Our own.
Yeah. I don't want to believe that we can't repair it.
Okay.
I don't want to believe that. And I think us having this type of conversation is repairing it in our own way. it's just people getting out of their way. Because what exactly are we afraid of?
Well, I think that this conversation, I think, is going somewhere else. And what I'll say is the problem with that will probably be the rap music. But that's a different topic, because if you think about our rap music, we don't talk about love and community.
That's fair.
I think somebody said we're playing serial killer music.
I mean, that's fair.
Or, so
it's changing the culture then.
Yeah, changing the culture. Like Kendrick Lamar said, I've sat with the culture. The culture is toxic. Like, we have to do something different, and we have to acknowledge the fact that we need a reckoning with our entertainment and our arts.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. There's some great artists out there, though. I don't want all artists to be able to express themselves, but we really have to sit with some of the music that we listen to. Cognitive dissonance is how we're able to sit there and listen to some of their music.
Yeah, because I done caught a few words and I said, whoa, how am I doing a backhand bounce to this?
But that's one of the barriers, too, I think, that has kind of kept us in this cycle of being stuck and not seeing each other and not being intimate with each other.
Yeah.
But like you said, Britt, we can repair this, and if we zoom out, it seemed like a really big problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if we zoom in, we know that we are doing the work every day to make sure we are creating safe spaces for each other and for our clients.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what does that look like in the therapy room versus also like what it looks like in your personal life when you are pushing the bounds and challenging these stereotypes of what intimacy is?
I like to be curious.
I like to encourage people to be curious, and to stop limiting themselves. And one of the biggest things, so when working with couples, active listening to your partner. That's how you build intimacy. But then also for people to stop also like adhering to societal norms that's telling them that they can't do something because they are a certain gender. If it works for you in your house, you ain't even got to tell nobody you're doing it like that. Do what's work for you and your person. And you guys will have a great, healthy dosage of intimacy.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and that was like one of the key takeaways when we were talking. And he said, I don't adhere to shoulds.
Come on.
No. I'm just playing. Is it brother?
Oh, it wasn't a client.
No, it wasn't a client. It was.
I was about to say, what is happening right now?
It was not a client.
Oh, okay. I thought you said therapy room.
Therapy or in personal life.
Oh, okay.
Because girl, I was about to say,
oh, okay.
We love that.
We love that for you.
I don't think, okay, can we, I don't think
now we're talking about romance.
No,
we're not. That was a general, none of us should be adhering to shoulds. It limits our capacity, ability.
It dehumanizes you, in my opinion.
Yes. I just want to say.
Say it, girl.
That having a growth mindset, fellas.
And women.
Yes. Is the most attractive thing.
That's a big part. That could be a beautiful part of intimacy.
Correct. And it makes the intimacy so much easier when you have a growth mindset. Because we are both being heard. We are both trying to adjust. We're both offering each other grace.
Okay.
We're willing to grow together.
Okay.
That makes for a beautiful unit.
And that's also open communication, which is a building block of intimacy.
Yes.
So we are talking about romance right now.
In that area. But I think we could push it further with the growth mindset in other areas as well. Because I feel like for me, this would be things like hosting the book club or joining, like somebody maybe joining dance. Dancing can also be very intimate. But it's pushing your own bounds to explore things that you might enjoy, giving yourself a chance.
That's that self-intimacy. And if you are stuck and don't know like what you're interested in, there is something you were interested in as a child. Go back to all those hobbies. Go back to explore all those things and make new memories.
I like that you said that, because I think that people forget that you could still, like, adulthood doesn't stop your joy. Right? Like, it doesn't have to be about work.
No.
You get to create as an adult. That's the beautiful part about growth, or growing in age, really is being able to recreate things to continue on that joy.
And this is not to discount or dismiss the responsibilities that come along with being an adult.
Oh, for sure. Even more of a reason to do the things.
I was about to say, I think Brene Brown does a beautiful job of talking about us coming into adulthood and leaving behind the things that brought us joy. She talks about the missing piece of play.
Yeah.
And then so again, like, are we just working to live? Living to work? Like, what are we doing? Because where's the joy?
So we're getting into a little bit of the self-intimacy and creating that the daily routine for yourself. That's setting aside time for yourself, giving back to yourself, pouring into you, doing the things that bring you joy. And again, if you don't know, you're going to have to give yourself permission to go out and explore
be
activities that bring you joy.
And there has to be some intentionality behind it because, Britt, like you said, I didn't notice, like I hadn't, well, maybe you did notice, I hadn't been doing this thing like cooking or hosting. I think it's very easy in the day-to-day life to kind of get wrapped up in all of our responsibilities.
It is.
And also, I feel like that's one of the first signs that we kind of slip into increased anxiety or increased depression
and burnout.
And burnout because we're not as intentional with including or doing the things that we love or the things that bring us joy. And we have to, because society, your job is not going to tell you to include these things.
And how that shows up in romantic couples, what you just, in couples, not romantic couples, but how that shows up in couples is when you're not giving yourself those things, when you're not tuning into your self-intimacy, then you're coming home and being mean to your partners.
Yeah.
And then
that's not cute.
And that is being a barrier to your intimacy. Because you're going to want to have some sex. And you ain't going to be able to get there if you're not tuning into your self-intimacy, into the other parts of intimacy with your partner.
Yeah.
I mean, you might, but is it going to be that good?
Because you can have sex without intimacy. You can have intimacy without sex. But if you put intimacy and sex together, you got to...
I mean...
it's
a beautiful thing. And I think that's when people won't get out of their own way. Because why wouldn't you want to have that?
Why would you not? Like, have you not had it? Do you not know what it's like? I don't understand.
Like, so that's when you're in your own way.
For sure.
And you're allowing just that, you're robbing yourself of vulnerability. So therefore, you're robbing yourself of intimacy and you're robbing yourself of a good time. But
real good time.
Because
a real good
facts.
time. For sure. We kind of got off subject talking about physical intimacy, but those things will happen. I mean, that will happen organically if you really are tuning into all the other aspects of intimacy.
For sure.
So let's go ahead and get ready to wrap up with what are some things that people can start doing or just some practical skills they can start trying to include to begin practicing intimacy?
Well, first, I'll say I'm going to start with what some barriers are of intimacy, which would be something like trauma or some type of abuse. So something you can start if you are struggling with something like that is to go to therapy.
Yes.
So that you can start some healing process and get some tools so you can know how to navigate and cope with those symptoms. That's the first thing, to kind of build a relationship with yourself and to tap into that self-intimacy. For me, that's what I would leave people with.
That. Recognizing the barrier to know how to move forward.
Yes.
Okay, I like that.
And giving yourself that kind of love and care. A lot of times we think like, because I can handle it and I can still go to work, then I should. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
And let's be clear, Black people function well with depression and anxiety most of the time. It look different on us. And we need to do some research on that because it looks different on Black people. You can show up to work because Black people gonna wash their ass. They gonna brush their teeth. They gonna comb their hair. They're gonna look good, but they can be not feeling their best. So it looks different on us. And because it looks different on us, it's invisible to most people.
People think it doesn't exist. Yes, because why? As long as you are still taking care of or in service to other people, they do not notice.
Yep.
It's your responsibility to create that intimate relationship with yourself. And that really is just caring for yourself.
Right. Absolutely.
That's what that is.
What you have the right to do. We don't get a prize for suffering.
No. Say it again. Look in the camera.
We do not get a prize for suffering.
Say that.
I need us to know that.
Oh my God. Who said that? Is that you?
Yes.
That's
Dr. T.
Them your words?
Dr. TK.
And they ain't got no awards for that. Trophies.
Yeah, but you deserve care.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that. You don't, girl.
Yeah, I think that's a mic drop moment right there.
That is. I like it.
I think we done said what we needed to say. So, with that being said,
go love yourself.
Go love yourself.
Go love yourself.